Tonight on The Conversation.
I am the luckiest person on earth. There's this extraordinary person who is my partner in life. Everything seems perfect. Why aren't I happy?
To me, I feel like if you really understand depression or have really genuinely been through something like that, it's not romantic, not even a little bit.
Fear of failure is what stops us more than anything.
When body image became an issue for me was when I no longer fit the mold of a model.
The Conversation is a totally alternative interview series with women who have a story or experience to share. We talk about everything that women talk about: relationships, sex, kids, career, money problems, body image. We're basically talking about the universal language of women.
A lot of people get divorced, they've just finished a huge renovation on their house. Because I think you try. You don't want to break up with someone. You don't want to end a marriage. Especially if you really like the person, you just know that something's off, and so you try to change everything else. And we basically built a new house, and it was perfect, just a glorious house. And the day it was finished is when I knew that it wasn't the house.
It's so interesting because people say a home is metaphorically a symbol of your relationship for a couple.
I think that I finally started being really honest with myself, and that was the scariest thing to do, is to really kind of look in the mirror and say, I am the luckiest person on earth. There's this extraordinary person who is my partner in life. Everything seems perfect. Why aren't I happy? There's something wrong. And I kept trying to do different things, change different things to make everything happy, make everyone happy. And I would, I moved houses, thinking it's my environment.
You changed all the outside stuff.
Yeah, I changed all the outside stuff. I changed houses, and I thought it's the house. It's wrong for us, and it's making us something we're not. And we'd lost something, and I thought it's the environment. We'll change houses. We need space. We need nature. I kept thinking we need like grass. That will help everything. So we get the house, get the grass. Still not working. So I think we've got to renovate the whole thing. And I would literally walk in, and I would walk into the room of a house that I bought because I loved, and I'd walk in and say, I'm being decapitated. The house is decapitating me. The house is decapitating me.
Doesn't feel right.
And he would say like, well, okay, we'll bust up the ceilings. I mean, really trying to accommodate all these requests. Like, I need space, I can't breathe. Okay, we'll bust up the ceilings. And then I would walk in after that was done and say, I can't breathe. I'm being blinded now. Like, all these things, I'd be like, it's the walls of the house. So we'd bust open the walls and put windows.
You know, when you do everything that you can, and it would seem like this is the perfect opportunity, and you still have unrest, that is the time, to really make a change. But I don't know, that's still so scary.
It's so scary.
Like, were you terrified?
The most terrified I'd ever been. It's the scariest thing I've ever done in my life. And the day that I knew I had to ask for a divorce was the worst day of my life, because you're flooded with insecurity that you're making the wrong decision.
Like, what did you think? Like, no one's gonna love me again, I'm never gonna be alone.
Yeah, I have no idea how to be alone, which is probably the number one reason I knew I had to, because I had never been alone and I was terrified of it, so I knew I had to do it once in my life. And it was such a relief, and then I felt suddenly so human and so flawed, but honest. I mean, I just keep coming back to that honest place. I mean, that's really worth anything. It's worth anything to feel like you're not living a lie. And because ultimately living a lie will make you hurt other people. And I knew that's what was going to happen. That's why I said, I'm a terrible wife. I'm just acting like an ass.
Once you got over the initial terror, how was it? How is it being out in the world now? Like, what was that first morning like when you woke up and you were like, oh, I'm Olivia, who am I?
I actually felt like I was getting to know myself. And that's what this process has been about. Like, I feel like I'm learning about myself, dating myself. Like, what do you like to do?
What do you like to do? Have you discovered anything that you like to do that you had no idea you like to do? Or stuff that you didn't like?
Well, stuff that I didn't like that I no longer have to do. I mean, there's a lot of things that I think you get into a pattern of in a relationship because the other person likes to do it. Certain music, you're like, I never liked that music. I don't ever have to listen to it again.
Oh, I remember that feeling when I first got divorced. I was like, oh my gosh, I never have to listen to this certain band again, in my case.
Exactly. And I think for me, no one expects it to be easy and happy coming out of a relationship, a long one, but it's certainly harder than you imagine.
I mean, I think that at least the goal for me, and I know it is for a lot of people, is to get to that place where it's a choice to be with somebody, where you get yourself and your
Exactly.
life in a place where you're like, I actually like me enough, I like my life enough.
Yes.
And I'm not just gonna like jump into bed with the first guy that comes along that likes me. I'm gonna say, what are you offering? What are you bringing to the table?
And that stops you from assimilating too much, because what happens, I think, if you don't have enough of a developed identity and personality, is you meet someone you're mad about and they're the greatest people you've ever met, and then you just become them. I mean, I'm like, you know, the Japanese loving baseball. I'm like, like I find something that's foreign to me and I'm like, wow, you're fascinating. Screw my interests. I love what you love. Like coming out of my marriage, know a lot about, you know, flamenco and philosophy and a lot of the amazing things that he taught me. Great.
But you don't like flamenco.
No, I don't like.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like learning to figure out what I love, what I do, and so I can be the one teaching someone else something, and you can meet in the middle as opposed to just like, great, I'm a great partner because I'll love everything that you love. But it takes just taking the time to not be with another person for a minute.
I remember the first time I did a period of time by myself. I too got married really young and was there for 8 years. And learning to date myself, a friend said to me, you need to spend an evening with yourself as you would if you were going on a date. I said, what does that mean?
Yes.
And she said, well, you know, you need to like put a nice dress on and do your hair and makeup, or like however you would want to present yourself to a date.
Yes.
And make yourself a nice meal. I was like, this is so corny. Like, I can't even believe.
It's so important.
And I had to do it, and it was so uncomfortable. I was literally crawling out of my skin.
It's so uncomfortable to learn to do these things for yourself, that it's not for anyone else. But man, it's hard, but it's a part of becoming an adult. And that's what I really had a sense that I had stunted my growth. I think that was one of the things that made me feel so kind of uncomfortable in my marriage, was really no fault of my husband. It was me realizing that I had sort of arrested development. And I knew the only way I was gonna grow the up was to learn to take care of myself.
And how are you taking care of yourself now?
Well,
through this process?
That has been a journey, because you know, you go through this incredible roller coaster with your just self-preservation, just survival. Initially, you do whatever it takes to survive in terms of taking care of yourself. I went through this period of like being so kind of high on having finally made this leap, that I was almost in a manic phase. Like I lost a bunch of weight, and I was really never sleeping. I mean, people would say to me, you know, you don't sleep. I mean, I moved in with a girlfriend and she said, you don't sleep. You sleep 3 hours a night.
Well, you needed the inertia.
Yeah.
The amount of inertia and energy you needed to collect to like propel you out of that
situation. It takes a while, but eventually, like anything does, it slows down. And then you go through the period where you're self-medicating with something to fill a void, because you have created a void by removing someone from you. You know, there's a chunk missing, and people fill it with all sorts of things.
I did. I went down the list. Like when I left my first marriage, I filled it with drugs and alcohol, and then I had a child, so that just didn't work. And then I went to sex, and then that stopped working because then no one would have sex with me. I was like, what the hell's going on? I've been married forever, and no one would. I was like, I couldn't believe it. So that wouldn't work. I tried. And then I went to food, and I put on like a lot of weight, and then I went to shopping. And I went through each one of the things trying to fill the void until I was like, all right, the gig is up. I gotta deal with me.
That's kind of the point I'm at now. I definitely
If you want to go shopping, I could do a little bit of that.
Yeah, that's my next phase. I definitely self-medicate with food. That's my thing. I love to cook. I mean, I always convince myself, like, it's better than crack cocaine, so I guess it's okay. But, you know...
well, it is.
It is. But, like, you know, food is like a hug on the inside. I mean, I always say that, like, a muffin is a hug on the inside. And I'm a healthy person, but I definitely packed it on because I wanted to feel a buffer between me and the pain, because the world started getting really scary. New relationships, dating, all was a lot more painful than I ever imagined.
Oh, man.
Learning to be by myself and be okay with it and not need the validation of another human being, that has been the biggest challenge. But I know coming out of that, I'll be a better person, better partner eventually for someone.
You know, I went from being a really outgoing, like, class clown to not being able to even bear being around my friends. There was something too heartbreaking about it.
Depression is a really personal thing. It's a dark place, and it's really in your own mind.
I just go to a super dark place within myself.
I have been in a room with people and felt totally alone.
To me, it's more, I guess you want to take it literally, more like a feeling. I guess number one would be, darkness, maybe helplessness.
My stepdad just said, he just asked me one question. He said, what does it feel like? And no one had asked me that, and I really thought about it, and it was like, I knew exactly what it felt like. It felt like I was desperately homesick, but I'm home. I had suffered depression from like 13 to 16, very intensely. I went from being a really outgoing, class clown to not being able to even bear being around my friends. There was something too heartbreaking about it. Being obsessed with the thought that I was totally alone in my body, that nobody else could see behind my eyes, and it made me scared.
And what has helped you? What's been effective? Because I know it's different for every person. Some people, things work for them, and other people it doesn't. It's such an individual journey. So I'm just kind of curious, what has worked for you?
It's so funny, you know how you were changing in my bedroom?
Yes.
So a friend of mine was changing in my bedroom, and she saw a book on the side of my bed, and I had been going through a hard time, and I just heard her go like, "Oh, Sarah," and I'm like, what? And the book has the saddest title, but it was such an inspiring book to read. It's called When Things Fall Apart.
Oh, I know it very well.
Yeah. And, but, it's like, it has the saddest title, like When Things Fall Apart.
It's
and she was like,
amazing
"Oh,
book."
Sarah. But just living through it, being, the bravery is just in existing. Sometimes there are little remedies, like put on your sneakers and exercise,
Yeah, that's so true, isn't it? It's like the endorphins and the studies I've read about depression saying that in clinical studies they've given a placebo, an antidepressant, and then exercise therapy. And the people with the exercise therapy did just as well, if not better, than the people with the medication.
Yeah. Though I'm also on medication. But I'm lucky. I found the thing that works for me at an early age.
You're really
It's
lucky.
in my family, because it is something that I know you have to just try. I think that medication is prescribed way too willy-nilly. Mm-hmm. At the same time, I need it, and personally, and
works for
my
you.
life has changed, and the way it's changed is I feel like I've been given my life back. I mean,
do you feel
I
like
just felt like I could be me again. Like,
Right.
you know what I mean? Like, I was just spiraling into places that were based on not actual things, but just this chemical kind of spiral of helplessness. Of course, I think bouts of depression in life, if you can get through to the other side, it can inform wonderful things in your life,
What's amazing about someone that has lived through hell and has come through the other side is that there's certain things you gain in that process, you know? And it's really unique.
If you look inward, in any way, if anyone looks inward in any way, it's going to benefit them. It's funny because, being in comedy, it's a lot of people and a lot of negativity and a lot of self-deprecation, And I'm not saying I'm not a part of that or I don't take a part of it, but I do try to step back and not, because the thing about constant self-deprecation, constant putting you down, not only that you start to believe it, but I think that it's a misconception when people are constantly putting themselves down in front of people that they're being humble, but the truth is it's total self-obsession.
It's really
there's
low
no
self-esteem.
room left for others.
Right.
It's always just, even if you're saying, I'm a jerk, I'm this, I'm dumb, I'm stupid, I'm ugly, my nose is weird, it's still me. You know what I mean?
Right.
If you can be okay with yourself, you're gonna have a lot more room to have other people in your life,
How do you feel about having kids? Do you want to have kids?
I love kids. I
not
love
yours?
kids. Well, I mean, I haven't had kids yet, and it's so funny because my gynecologist, I feel like this is like white people problems or something. I'm like, my therapist,
No, black people go to therapy too.
Good, because they should.
And have gynecologists.
Listen, this is an intervention to black people. Go to therapy. No, all right. He's on me so hard because I'm 40. He's like, if you ever want kids, you better freeze your eggs.
Right.
You know, you gotta freeze those eggs. And I'm just like, but I don't want kids. I'd love to adopt someday. And I have a lot of adoption in my family. And, you know, I know that I have this depression and, you know, that it's in my family. And, you know, everyone's got every family has their stuff, but for me, I just don't feel strong enough to see that in a child. And I also, besides that, want to adopt. You know, it's so funny, you know, we live in Los Angeles where everybody is like, don't get your dog from a breeder, get your dog from the shelter, you know? You're a jerk if you get your dog from a breeder, and I agree, you know? But, you know, don't get your people from a breeder. There are human puppies in shelters, and it's odd that never seems to be a connection that people make. Yeah. And, you know, I always say, well, I've been talking about it lately because it's just like, you know, I feel like it's easier to love if you're not okay with yourself, especially, and I'm a dog person, obviously, but it's easier to love a dog than a person because in need, you know, because you don't see all the things you hate about yourself reflected back in the eyes of a dog, you know?
Absolutely.
And I would say, like, if Africa was filled with a bunch of Springer Spaniels dying of AIDS and starvation, we'd probably take care of it in a day.
Would you reconsider your choice?
Well, yeah, maybe, but I mean, I haven't frozen my eggs, and I mean, what are the chances my womb isn't polluted at this point?
Pretty slim.
You know, I do believe in adoption, and, you know, I mean, when my friends are pregnant, I'm so excited, and I love babies, but
you don't have pregnancy envy?
I do. I think it's it seems like an amazing experience, you know, I mean, you're growing a skeleton inside you.
Yeah, it's kind of, it is amazing. Yeah. It's a lot of things.
I watched my oldest niece be born. Like, I was standing, like, between my sister's legs. Came out? I didn't because I passed out.
You did?
I did.
Wow.
Always have to make it about me.
Had you ever, isn't it crazy how vaginas look with that head coming out?
All I could think is, oh my God, we are animals.
Yeah.
We're animals.
No, I know. I gave birth to 2 of them, I know.
There's a point where her head was out, and here are my sister's legs, and here's her head.
I know.
She looked like Don Rickles with, like, giant thighs coming out of her ears.
When I wanted, together with my partner, Kenny Laird, to launch the Huffington Post, you know, there were so many things that could have stopped me if all I cared about was being successful, because over 90% of the people, including people who loved me, thought this wasn't going to succeed.
The best part of life is the challenges that come your way.
I don't victimize myself, and I don't let things victimize me.
The best things that have happened in my life have come from something terrible that could have happened.
That's what makes you stronger, is when you use the challenges and the adversity, and you try to make new choices.
If you look back at the things that were considered failures in your life.
The most devastating things.
The most devastating things. They opened other doors. I mean, for me, it meant I came to New York. My books, the Huffington Post, all these things would not have happened if Bernard Levin had married me. And the Levin Post would not sound as good as the Huffington Post. In my case, it was a man that I was crazy in love with in my 20s. I was with for 7 years, and he wouldn't marry me. I mean, I didn't really care so much about being married, but I really wanted to have children. I was 30 by then. At the time, I thought I would never recover. And he was perfectly happy to stay with me for the rest of his life, but he didn't want to have children. I was perfectly clear I wanted to have children. So I left London, where we lived, and moved to New York.
How did you leave him? How did you get the courage to leave if you loved him?
Because I knew that this was more important for me.
To have children?
Yeah. I knew that if I woke up in my 50s and didn't have children, I would be resentful and angry, and it would not work. I was very clear about that.
And that's the thing to remember as well, is the things that we think will break us.
Yes.
You know, and we all have them, are the things that inevitably, if we can look at it, if we can change our perspective, those are the things that help shape us and create us and make us the people that we are.
It really was a defining moment. Because it meant that a lot of the things that I totally believed in, I totally believed in a spiritual practice. I've meditated ever since I was actually a teenager, because my mother meditated. Can you believe that in Athens, Greece, my mother meditated? But then my work became like much more important, and my spiritual practice became like a side thing.
Did it shift? Did you shift your priority where your spiritual practice became number one and your work number two?
It's not just my spiritual practice, because for me it's really about every moment in life. It's how do I react to bad news?
How do you?
Well, I mean, I'm working on it, you know, trust me, it's a work in progress. But you know what, we need to stop using, she's working 24/7, she's so committed. We need to stop using this as a compliment. If you're working 24/7, you can't possibly be effective.
And I think that people need to start being honest about it, because in truth, like you said, if you're working 24/7, you're not doing anything else. You're not sleeping, you're not eating, you're not exercising, you're not meditating, you're not doing any of the things that you need to do so that you don't go crazy.
And also, I feel that many of our problems are because we're a sleep-deprived nation and a sleep-deprived culture. And in fact, one of the ways in which we women need to change the world is men see sleep deprivation as a sign of virility. You know, I had dinner, I remember, a few months ago with a guy who bragged that he had only gotten 4 hours sleep the night before. And I thought to myself, I didn't say it, but I thought to myself, you know what? If you had gotten 5, this dinner would have been a lot more interesting. So it's like, how early does your day start is a sign of how important and busy you are. But I think if you now realize how debilitating that is, and how, in fact, much less effective we are, because we are like zombies sometimes through the day, then our whole approach to our day changes. And you know, it's amazing the research they have about the damage sleep deprivation does, the accidents caused by sleep deprivation. Not to mention things that it's harder to measure, like the intangible bad decisions that we make.
I have always been told by people, and I don't agree with this, and I don't have any answers to this, and I'm asking you this question sincerely from me. How do you succeed as building an empire and being a businesswoman with spiritual consciousness? How do those two go together?
Well, I actually think that as we're in this turning point, I do believe we're in a turning point in our world where a lot of these values are coming to the forefront. And so what happens is that when we realize, that's the key for me, that having a successful business is very important, but it's not as important as how we do it. Then suddenly there is a fearlessness that comes in.
Yeah.
Because if you think of it, if you're so attached to the outcome, like if you are so attached to this show being a huge success, then you're going to be paralyzed.
Absolutely.
So that's the same in business. Like when I wanted, together with my partner, Kenny, to launch the Huffington Post, you know, there were so many things that could have stopped me if all I cared about was being successful. Because over 90% of the people, including people who loved me, thought this wasn't going to succeed.
Oh, don't you love that? I know when people look at you and they're like, nice idea, good luck.
Nice idea. You in the internet, you're in your 50s. The internet is a young person's game. I mean, for me, the Huffington Post is a platform for anything that I believe is important, that we can explore and use it as the starting point of a conversation.
But it is, listen, it's extraordinary that you had an idea for something, and like you said, probably a bunch of your friends thought you were crazy, and you went ahead and did it. And because it's authentic, I think the reason why something succeeds today, the things that succeed in my mind are rooted in service. The essence of whatever it is, the product, the website, the film, the TV show, whatever the hell it is, it's rooted in service, that people need the thing and it's a value to them. And that's what I see succeeding. And in truth, what you created with the Huffington Post, people needed a voice. They wanted to speak, they wanted to be heard, and you created a forum to allow for that. That's why I think it's successful.
Well, I totally agree with you about what value are we adding? How are we making people's lives better, easier? And also, if you think of it, a lot of the time we do have good ideas, but we are afraid of failing. I think especially for women, and I see that in my daughter's friends, fear of failure is what stops us more than anything.
Yeah, I agree.
And I was lucky in that I had a mother who was full of sort of this colloquial wisdom. And she used to say to me, you know, failure is not the opposite of success. It's a stepping stone to success. There is nobody who has not failed along the way. So I think it's very important for young women, especially as they are starting in life, to recognize that, because otherwise they only see people's successes. So when I speak of my failures.
What is your vice?
I like to have a puff of pot end of day.
I don't think I've ever felt like the need to lose weight to become more successful.
I think media values women who are thinner.
I've always been thin. I remember in elementary school, we were learning about anorexia and bulimia, and I was so scared people would think I was that.
I think there's more of a revolution of real bodies going on.
When I was younger, I did work in the fashion industry, and so I definitely being there taught me that I should be skinnier to be successful.
Here's a scout from big time New York telling me, you know, you're going to be a star and you will have money to pay for school. I wanted to go to an Ivy League school. I wanted to travel the world. So it was incredibly tempting for me as a 14-year-old girl to have that escape. And to escape, I had to be thin. And thin was 95 pounds for me after a raging eating disorder. When body image became an issue for me was when I no longer fit the mold of a model. My body was rebelling against me at the time. I had a horrible eating disorder, and I decided to go into plus-size modeling.
Now, what does that mean? Like, eating disorders manifest in different ways. Some people are bulimic, some people are anorexic. There's all different variations. What did it look like for you?
What it looked like for me, I was absolutely an exercise bulimic. What I did was I would consume large amounts of nothing. So I would eat sugar-free Jellos, and I would eat vegetables, and all of these things, a lot of chemicals.
Just to fill your stomach up.
Just to fill my stomach, to fool my mind that I was full when actually I was incredibly starved. And because that's how I would get to go to the gym. I remember being really focused on my meal. No one could speak to me while I was eating. I would react violently.
You were like, do not go near my Jello.
Right. This Jello is going to last me the next 2 hours, and you know, taking each bite, enjoying each bite, and then I knew that I would spend maybe 4 hours at the gym after that. I got to the point where it felt like my muscles were melting off bone. My joints, I mean, I felt, I suppose, like an 85-year-old woman. And I am talking 17 years old, 16 years old. I was going to the gym 8 hours a day after my jobs, after 10 castings a day. Guess who's still going to the gym? Me, and it was incredibly difficult.
Did your family and friends like notice, obviously, how could they miss what was going on, but what did people say to you?
Anorexia is an incredibly private disorder. I think people who suffer with this tend to be incredibly private, and
but it was obvious, like you.
Oh yes.
Like considering to what your normal, natural, healthy body weight is,
Right.
it was obvious. Like, was no one
Sure.
saying to you, like, what is happening? You're wasting away. Because I know for me that especially in the fashion industry, you know, the thinner someone is, like,
Right.
it can work in your favor. So
Right.
was there anyone in your industry that was saying, like, honey, you need to start eating, like, this is not right?
Well, here's the thing. When it comes to people mentioning my weight, I remember not having friends because I was at the gym. There's no time for socializing. The people that I would work with would know me for a few hours and they wouldn't ask questions. All the models are thin, so they don't ask questions, or they turn away and pretend not to notice. And
Well,
nobody
it's more
wants to
socially
know.
acceptable. So, you know, here's
Right.
the thing. You know, there are some addictions that I've struggled with, and there are the ones that are harder to address because they're socially acceptable. Drinking is socially acceptable, right?
Yes.
Being thin and not sitting there pigging out
Right.
is deemed a lot more attractive,
Right,
for
yes.
sure. And then the other secret one is the pills, because people can do that in secret. You can just go, no
right,
one
pop.
done,
Yes,
right?
exactly,
You're
right.
sorted. So, and a lot of people are doing it. You came out of denial about your eating disorder and you decided that you were gonna do something.
What made me get better was knowing I had options. I had just done a 16-hour weekend workout because I knew I had Polaroids that were coming up on this particular Monday, because my agency wanted to talk about my body. Couldn't even walk home.
16 hours?
Yes.
Did no
8
one
hours
think-
each day.
Did
I had
no
two
one
gyms.
stop you in the gym, be like, well, you've been in here for 8 hours, go home?
And I guess in this way, I was very clever because I had two gyms and would transition back and forth.
It's just
to
like the
hide it.
drug dealer.
At this point, when I went in for those Polaroids, of course they picked apart my body and they pointed to my dreaded area, which was my thighs. And I remember having a total breakdown and confessing, guys, okay, fair enough. I've been starving myself and lost something like 80 pounds for you. What do you think is going on? And now you're telling me I need to lose weight and that I need to diet. If I diet anymore, I will die. Diet, die.
You
Like,
actually
that's
said
where
that.
we are. Yes, I said this.
And what was the response?
You know, now that I think of it, I can't remember her actual face, but I can imagine that she wasn't surprised because she pulled me into another room and she said, you have two options. And the two options were, you can be a commercial model, which means you can do catalog, and that's fantastic and all, but that is not why I do this job. And then I said, so okay, well, what is my second option? She said, well, you have plus size modeling. I said, well, what's plus size modeling?
And you didn't know about that?
I had no idea about plus size modeling. And she said, well, you could be any size you want. That's what she said to me. You can be any size you want.
So those were the key words for you.
I was like, well, first of all, if I can be any size I want and still model, why am I here? Why didn't I know about this from the beginning? We wouldn't even be here, you know, having this conversation, and I wouldn't be basically working out 16 hours in a weekend. So I thought, this is my moment. When my agent gave me those two options and said commercial modeling or plus size, and I said, well, of course plus size. It was that moment. I didn't wait a couple of weeks to think about it. I didn't wait and see what would happen. I knew in that moment, I'm done. And the switch went on and I said, goodbye anorexia. I literally walked out of that agency and I went and had lunch. And I remember going to my usual cafe where I got my salad with no dressing and it was just, you know, the romaine lettuce. And I remember looking and thinking, today's a different day. I am a different girl. What are they ordering? Ah, okay, normal people order other things. So I sat down, ate that meal, right? And I thought, the world didn't blow up. This restaurant didn't implode. I feel great. I have energy. Actually, I feel like I'm ready to go out and conquer the world.
When you stopped starving yourself to be a supermodel,
yes,
you went to your natural body size and became hugely successful. You got to have the career that you wanted. And you've worked with the photographers who are the best in our industry, and you have shot for magazines that are the most acclaimed and work with the most creative, brilliant minds in the fashion industry.
And that is everything.
And it's a wonderful achievement.
That I wanted to do. That when I was 14 years old and this whole thing began, that's what I wanted to do. But here's the thing, I did that, and I did it at a bigger size because I was happier.
I really want to talk to you for a second about what your recovery has looked like, because there is an epidemic of girls and women who have a form of an eating disorder. There's an epidemic of it.
Yes.
And it's starting as young as 6, 5, 4, some kids are 4 years old. It's crazy. Like, the statistics are just so disturbing. And I want to understand from you, What have you done? Like, what does your recovery look like? Because really, like, these are the things we need to hear about.
Absolutely. Well, I think the key thing to know, if you are someone suffering with anorexia, there is no shame in getting help. You have to know that recovery is different for everyone. I think some people think recovery means you're gonna go have a cheesecake for breakfast, lunch, and dinner and be okay with that. That's not recovery for everybody. I think recovery for me was I'm gonna eat organic, whatever I want, but it doesn't have chemicals, it doesn't have certain things like that. And I remember still, that was my beginning stages of recovery. I get to eat what I want, but yet I still have that slight bit of control, but in a positive way. You know, these things about myself, I need to be perfect, I need to be this, and OCD, you can turn them around and actually be incredibly successful because of these attributes that are you.
So it's really identifying what works for you and making your recovery personalized. And that could mean going to therapy, that could mean finding a support group, that could be reading a lot of literature, it could be reading a book by someone who is a role model for you,
or seeing Nigella Lawson on her TV show and realizing beauty isn't a one-size-fits-all. And plus size made me confident. It let me learn my body. It let me recover. I was told I was beautiful and how wonderful when I was gaining weight because that was natural for me. That was the best thing that I did was make that decision to go into plus size modeling. That was probably my therapy because my confidence, I learned how to work that body.
I mean,
I loved that body.
Model, boy.
I loved it. I loved every moment of it.
Did you ever consider not modeling, by the way, as an option?
Absolutely.
Wasn't an option for you. You wanted to be a successful model at all costs.
People ask me, why didn't you just give up modeling if all of this, pain and anorexia, all of this came from that? It didn't come from that. I think that this job, this experience, meeting people like you, I mean, you're inspiring, and this job, I think you have to do what you love. And I said, you know what? I love this job. I don't want to change jobs, but I'm gonna change the rules.
What is your favorite sex position?
Ooh.
What? What do you lie about?
I lie about things that won't get me in trouble if the lie is found out.
Ah. What do you lie about?
Probably why I'm 15 minutes late. It's not traffic. I'm just late.
Lie about
Everything.
nothing. Everyone lies that I'm busy.
I lie about the times when I don't want to do something.
I don't lie about my age.
My age.
Or my weight.
My weight.
I don't really lie unless it's to save somebody's feelings.
People will appreciate that you're acting honestly, that you're being truthful.
That I'm comfortable in my body when sometimes I'm not.
What is your vice?
Food.
Food.
Junk food.
Eating candy when I'm not supposed to.
My unlimited, insatiable desire for cappuccinos.
Working too hard.
Shopping.
I smoke a lot.
I like to have a puff of pot end of day. I don't know if that's a vice.
I don't think I have any.
What is your favorite sex position?
Ooh.
What?
Being on top?
Top. Probably me on top.
It changes up.
I guess that depends on the mood you're in, or the mood that I'm in.
It's kind of dirty.
It's like my favorite. Just pounding it.
Doggy style.
Yeah, it's a good one.
On the floor, everywhere.
Probably missionary style.
I like them all.
We got so dirty. Lifetime.
What would you tell your 14-year-old self?
It's going to be all right. That whatever you go through, it will be all right.
Don't give up on your dreams right now. Listen to that voice and go for it.
It can be done, and I think I would just say, yeah, totally go for it.
face your fears and make the choice and understand the repercussions. It's all worth it if you feel honest with yourself.
Everything goes on, and even with the downside of life, there's always gonna be an upside.
All the things that you think are your biggest shame-filled things about yourself are gonna, all of them are going to bear wonderful fruit in your life. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think I would even get that at 14. I wasn't bright.
I have made a choice to listen to myself. Even if everyone in the entire world doesn't agree with what I think, I know me at the end of the day, and I know what I can handle emotionally, what I can handle physically, what I can handle. Well, it's important, and I encourage when I speak to women, I speak to them. Yeah, sure, I say be yourself, and be like, know yourself.
I think we all have a need for approval. The question is, does that need for approval become an obstacle? If our primary goal is to want to be approved of, then we're not going to take risks. We're not going to speak out. We're going to try and blend in.
I think so many comics romanticize the romantic notion of the depressed comedian or to me, I feel like if you really understand depression or have really genuinely been through something like that, it's not romantic, not even a little bit. Your dream of happiness and finding a way to change the way you think, 1 degree to the right or left, that will kind of open up the world to you. When I get inspired like that, it ends up in stand-up. It's a nice, positive way to feed your comedy,
A lot of people said, wow, I feel like I'm seeing an old friend who I haven't seen in years.
Do you feel like that?
Many people said it, yeah. And I think
that must be a good feeling.
It's a good feeling. I do feel more connected to myself, and I feel more relaxed because I'm very kind of open and raw. I mean, I really feel like I've let people see me, and I'm no longer at all trying to pretend I'm perfect.
Olivia Wilde.
Full power.
Turning the lights up. Where's the other one?
What a stupid person. You see, judging myself.
Just ooh. That was an interesting sensation.
What happened?
The mic kind of like went inside me.
Oh.